my mid-20s.
Right.
The first time I really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And and I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be, because a whole place can't be like, you know, Wierd town, you know, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them and they tell you don't go into the house on the hill, and it's like that. And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real.
I've always thought that extreme power and wealth requires an equal amount of misery, poverty, and abuse. Massive corporations wouldn't be able to grow indefinitely and exponentially without fueling their business with low-wage workers in third-world countries. Anywhere you look and anything you buy from an established brand can profit from a global supply chain that uses child labor and abusive working conditions in some way. Chocolate, meat, rice, clothes, gas, gasoline, computer parts, smartphones, candy, cigarettes, alcohol, and almost anything are part of this scheme, according to the US Department of Labor. Misery creates people willing to work for pennies as long as they can survive, and wealth creates the conditions for abuse and the ability to abuse without facing consequences. And the people inside the loop are sitting in silence, as the media rarely ever talks about it. There are no trends to defend it. There is no month to highlight the issue. There's no flag to band people to do something about it. And there are no movies or shows deconstructing this reality. But there's an exception, an outlier, we could say.
There were some who resisted.
The Sound of Freedom. This is an indie action movie based on Tim Ballard, founder of Operation Underground Railroad, an anti-human trafficking organization. Ballard served 12 years as a US Special Agent for Homeland Security. In specific, he was part of a team that fought against child trafficking and online abuse. He left office in October 2013. According to Ballard, he became tired of the nation's inability to take action against crimes in poorer nations. So he quit months before getting his retirement. In 2014, the railroad had their first major operation in Colombia, Cartagena, where they rescued about 160 children and arrested over 50 traffickers. It's one of various operations the organization has conducted in South America. The movie depicts and fictionalizes the events in Cartagena. It is overall a solid, well-produced and well-acted action thriller. But because it's based on true events, it's a heartbreaking glimpse into a dark reality that thrives in the complacency of those in power. 20th Century Fox had the distribution rights, but after Disney bought the studio, they ditched the movie for unknown reasons. And yes, this is the same company that has an
secret gay agenda
and openly supports the LGBT agenda, which includes sex reassignment surgeries for minors as the most important thing ever. So is the safety of children not important enough? Not for corporate studios, because no one wanted to produce or distribute the movie. Therefore, the film debuted with crowdfunding support and gained attention before its release because Mel Gibson backed it.
One of the most disturbing problems in our world today is human trafficking, and particularly the trafficking of children.
And despite its low budget, $40 million, it did better in the box office than The Flash, Shazam, Dungeons & Dragons, Megan, The Northman, Woman King, Fantastic Beasts 3, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. But the industry would prefer to keep the suffering of children in silence. The media is not allowed to support true causes or even make serious investigations. The best they can do is use corporate-approved talking points.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Rolling Stone, they say it is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. QAnon and stuff, they say, even though the movie is based on a true story. This is the same site that said, imagine Doctor Strange in an Evil Dead movie. The master of the mystic arts' second solo joint doubles as a genuine, old-school Sam Raimi horror movie, and that's a gift. review site robertebert.com. He said the movie has a message first and a story later. Even worse, the message is trying to get people to care more about child sex trafficking. 2 stars, it sucks.
You suck.
But Lightyear, it has 3.5 stars. This movie, you see, has the right type of message. And Cuties has 4 stars.
This film does try to make you sexually aroused by 11-year-olds. And I'll say it's not bad at it.
The Guardian, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon adjacent thriller set using America. They also talked about how the much smaller movie did not really do better than Lucasfilm's latest multi-$100 million movie featuring a popular IP Disney bot, far-right franchise, unlike Rings of Power, which is an absolute masterpiece according to The Guardian.
There's a tempest!
And weeks after Sound of Freedom debuted, The Guardian continued its campaign. Sound of Freedom passed the 100 million mark. Who's really watching the movie, they claim? It's a movie that sells its tickets but no one is watching. Later on in the article they have opinions of some experts in child trafficking. One of these says, young people end up in trafficking situations because their family is in incredible poverty, because of political unrest, because the child is being rejected by their family for their sexual orientation or gender identity. So gender affirmation therapies and universal basic incomes would solve this problem forever. Let's hear what Tim Ballard has to say about it.
I know that human trafficking is a $32 billion a year business. It's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, and I also know how kids get forced into that market. And it's through vulnerable situations like in the aftermath of a hurricane, mostly in a developed country, or an earthquake, or in this case, a war.
The Washington Post, QAnon, and you'd be crazy to believe anything the movie says. CNN, they begged you not to see the movie.
And The Sound of Freedom does focus on a real issue of sex trafficking. But that theme, it's sort of like that kernel of truth that feeds the QAnon conspiracy theory.
The Telegraph, they think the movie's main actor, Jim Caviezel, is weird because he's Christian. Remember that this is the actor that Hollywood ditched because he played Christ in Mel Gibson's The Passion of Christ. I should also mention how Mel Gibson became a Hollywood weirdo after Apocalypto, a movie that depicted Mayan and Aztec cultures as violent and unfriendly. Noah Berlasky from Bloomberg, he thinks Sound of Freedom is a dog whistle for QAnon fans. None of these outlets and none of the legacy media talks about the quality of the movie itself. They have a problem with what it's trying to say. And lastly, Variety, a solidly made and disquieting thriller about child sex trafficking. Oh, this doesn't go with my narrative. Let's awkwardly skip to the next section. Truth is power. A conspiracy theory exists because there's a lack of reliable information and trustworthy authorities against the backdrop of shady operations. But a conspiracy is only so until it becomes true, and the truth nowadays is a matter of power. Dr. Sumantra Maitra, senior editor at The American Conservative, says, truth and facts have no meaning, and the only thing that matters is demonstrable power, usually over you, dear reader. And the truth, according to the media, is that Sound of Freedom is QAnon wack. QAnon, if you're unfamiliar, is an umbrella term for conspiracy theories claiming the world is run by a group of elite Satan and child lovers. The media linked the movie to QAnon because the main actor, Jim Caviezel, has talked about adrenochrome before. Adrenochrome, according to conspiracy theories, is a drug made from children's blood and body parts. Forbes wrote about it on July 23rd. The adrenochrome conspiracy theory pushed by Sound of Freedom star. However, the adrenochrome patent exists. I'm gonna let an AI read it, as I don't dare try to read these scientific names.
Adrenochrome is also produced by a conventional method. For instance, it is produced by the oxidation of adrenaline with silver oxide or potassium ferrocyanide.
Anyhow, the patent explains that adrenochrome and its derivatives have excellent capillary and hemostatic properties. Therefore, it is used in treatments for cell regeneration, blood coagulation, and capillary regrowth. All of these attacks from the media are focused mostly on an aspect that's not part of the story, while detracting from the problems Sound of Freedom speaks about. And there is plenty of real-life evidence to take this movie a bit more seriously.
The Sound of Freedom does focus
regarding child labor. The US Department of Labor has a list of over 100 countries where child labor exists. Gold, bricks, sugarcane, coffee, tobacco, cotton, textiles, cattle, rice, fish, garments, coca, and adult content are the industries with the highest levels of child labor. According to the UN, about 160 million children around the world are working. Nearly 1 in 10 children is a child laborer in the global supply chain. The age ranges from 5 years old to 17 years old. About half of these, 70 million children, are working in hazardous conditions after being victims of human trafficking and prostitution. Dozens of multinational companies are profiting in some way from their tiny hands. Some of the companies that have had claims and investigations over child labor and sweatshops include Nestlé, H&M, Tesla, and Disney. No wonder the media can't talk about it. Regarding sexual abuse, we know that Hollywood is an industry full of sexual harassment, abuses of power, and gratuitous sex or nudity scenes. Producers and directors like Josh Whedon, Harvey Weinstein, and Nickelodeon's Wierd Dan Schneider are top winners.
I just want to thank my agent, Kevin Uvain, and God, Harvey Weinstein.
A recent survey by USA Today found that 94% of women in the entertainment industry have suffered sexual assaults in some way. Similarly, Western countries are introducing sexual content to kids' education with increased intensity. It has become somehow normal for parents to take kids to drag shows, or for drag queens wearing hornet helmets to read LGBT stories to kids in libraries. In fact, the United Nations recently recommended starting sexual education to kids when they are 5 years old. In most first world countries, kids spend 8 to 10 hours a day on school, while parents don't know what's going on, and where it's legal for teachers to help kids do a gender transition without the parents' consent. Nowadays, in countries like Canada, France, Britain, or the United States, kids could get suspended from school for skipping a Pride Parade event. Parents could go to jail for not supporting trans queens dancing in front of their babies. Additionally, many of the people in the entertainment industry are supporters of child abuse. Do you remember Bloomberg's Noah Berlatsky? He wrote that Sound of Freedom is QAnon trash. But a few years ago, he shared some weird ideas on Twitter. He has classified parents as an oppressive class. As a parent myself, I cannot extend how important this role is for a child. We are their core protectors, role models, and teachers. Even if we make mistakes, we're the ones who love them the most. Look at this face again. It is not surprising that this face has said before that pedophiles are essentially a stigmatized group. Let's move on from this weirdo. I could also mention Oprah Winfrey.
I'm going to put a little on your hand.
I'd do that. Oprah did.
Yeah, Oprah did it. So it's made from human foreskin.
She praised a so-called celebrity spiritual healer, John of God, for decades. She first promoted John of God in March 2015 in Oprah Season 2, Episode 116, John of God. She did it various times more on her show because they became friends. But in 2018, he was sentenced to 99 years in prison for abusing over 600 women and young girls and human trafficking operations involving minors. I am sure Oprah did not know anything about it though. As for Satanist claims, did you know there is a Church of Satan? It has over 700,000 members. Their core belief is that God doesn't exist, so you as a person are at the center of the universe. They are atheists, and so their pursue is personal freedom, pleasure, and pride.
Me.
It sounds like the standard plot of your regular Disney live-action remake. Lastly, we've seen how some of the most popular music stars, such as Sam Smith, Bad Bunny, Travis Scott, and Lady Gaga, have embraced this style. Is that not enough to ponder and question, because apparently Tim Ballard and Mel Gibson are working on a documentary about child trafficking? Keep your eyes open for the media backlash against these two pariahs.
And I can't help but feel that many of the attacks leveled at this movie are because this has bypassed the ordinary systems of promotion and production. This is not made by one of the big studios. This has not been promoted in the normal way, and it's still found a massive audience. I feel that the media in general are very threatened, obviously, by new independent media models.
French philosopher Thomas Hobbes wrote a seminal political book in 1651. Its short name is Leviathan, which he took from the multi-headed sea monster from the Bible. During the English Civil War between the royalists and the parliamentarists, Hobbes argued that the natural state of humankind is anarchy, a state where the strong dominate the weak, and so most people end up in a solitary and poor state. In other words, he said humans were inherently bad. He had a solution though, a social contract that has heavily influenced how modern Western democracies work. This is the legal exercise of violence to keep people in check. The military, the police, the justice system, and the law keep human beings in peace. However, what happens when people become too powerful and too rich to face the consequences of the law? What happens when they have the resources to hide and twist the truth? What happens when the media, corporations, and governments are working in tandem to pursue evil? And what happens when someone outside of the power structure threatens the Leviathan, and the beast would work tirelessly to keep the status quo, to preserve the silence. Tell me what you think, my friend. Subscribe if you enjoyed, hit the like button and keep the comment section
civilized.
Also, if you'd like to support the channel further, feel free to tip me on Ko-Fi.